Our guest today at the ICF Midwest Region Coaches Conference Meet the Presenter Series is an ICF certified master coach and president of Learning Journeys. Learning Journeys is a unique program that is accredited by the International Coaching Federation. This program is a designed experience that's about the development of the way of being needed to be an effective coach in addition to the essential core competencies required. The method is grounded in narrative coaching, which allows both coach and client to unpack the story that has kept them from what they want. And this person that we're talking to today is Jennie Antolak. The presentation that you're going to be hearing is going to be coming up on Friday morning to start your day during the conference on the 22nd there in Pittsburgh. And the title of the program or title of the presentation is Trust the Process, what really happens when we shift from rescuing clients to releasing up responsibility. And you know, Jennie, when I read that and I read the description of what you were going to present about, like I could relate to that so well because I believe in coaching and how effective it is and how great it works, yet the temptation to jump in and add or nudge them along or give them a little bit more is like so strong and it's so there. And so I really want to just kind of start this conversation about trusting the process and trusting the coaching process to begin with a question: why is it so hard to trust the process and not jump in? Why is that?
Well, that's such a great question because when somebody sits down and really puts trust in us, all of a sudden we take great responsibility for that. And then we start to think in our heads, oh my gosh, a lot is at stake here.
Yeah.
And so it is really hard for us when we think something is obvious or, oh, if they only knew this, or I went through something similar, let me just give this and then they won't have to struggle through this. And yet, that's probably the worst thing that you can do. And I just had a friend on Friday, we talked about this. She's a physician and she talked about that they've been trained their entire careers to give the numbers. If you can tell the patient that this is the number and you need to reach that number or you will get really sick, then they will change their behavior. But the reality is just the opposite happens. She is reminded of this all the time with patients. She said that she had a patient that came in 3 different times and she told her, look, you have diabetes. And every single time the woman said, no, I don't.
Wow.
She left and she kept coming back sicker and sicker and sicker. And then she said, wait a second, I'm a coach. What if I trust the process? And she came back and this time she asked her, what is it you want from this conversation? And the woman said, what I really want is I want to not lose my job, because she was a bus driver. And so she said, okay, well, what's the goal? And so she went right through the process of coaching, put aside her physician hat for that time being, and all of a sudden things transform for this woman. And yet when we see something so drastic, and we also have other responsibilities in our careers, that we seem to collapse those two, when the gift of coaching is trusting that your client has it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, and maybe, you know, maybe that's where, maybe it's the trust, you know, it's, and also the desire for the client. You want the client to win. You want them to have the breakthrough. As I was listening to you, I began to wonder, maybe it has to do with what it is that you choose to be invested in terms of that. When you're coaching, are you invested in them getting the breakthrough? Are you in, you know, what are you invested in for them that can, I suppose, pull you one way or another?
Well, and I think that that's a great way of looking at it, Jason, because it is, we go into it thinking I'm going to be invested in their goal and what they're up to in the world. And then in the back of our heads, we also have this ego piece that we're invested in. I need to be successful at this. And so then we kind of forget that as things go along and we see something that happens or doesn't happen. And so we're having this conflict in our heads that we have to keep coming back to, wait a second, what did they need from me? And how do I get more connected to what they're invested in rather than what I think they should be invested in.
Yeah, that's, I mean, especially when I think when you talk about stakes being high, I think that really speaks to it really well, because like I do business coaching, and the business people I work with want to see results in their business.
Yeah.
Sometimes the things we're coaching on are the things they need to get past in order to get the results that they want. And so they're both having to work on something that they didn't think they wanted to work on to be able to get what it is that they want, and also feeling at the same time that they're still not getting closer to what they want, so it's kind of like, within then the crossroads of the coaches. Do I just lean into the process and just say, hey, hang in there, this will get us there, just keep working at it, or start getting insecure. For the benefit of those that maybe are relatively new to coaching and that are experiencing the conference, or even this video is being new to it, could you summarize for us what we're talking about when we talk about the process of coaching in a simplified way?
Well, you can jump in, Jason, if I don't answer the question correctly. How I describe the process when I'm teaching it to my students is there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. And at the beginning of the process is getting very clear of what does your client want to focus on today, and staying within that parameter, understanding from their perspective, if this is their goal, what's important about that goal, where do they want to start inside of that, how big is it, how small is it, and where their meaning is inside of that. And then part of that process is not teaching them, not mentoring them, not advising them, but truly being curious with them and asking them questions throughout so that they can discover what's important about what I'm focusing on, where do I want to go with this, and holding true to that. And it's also about having them declare, what kind of perspective do I want inside of this process? So do I want to have a focus of accountability? Do I want to have a focus of what has meaning to me inside of this? And then just staying inside of that. Where we tend to let go is all of a sudden, as they're telling their story and we ask them questions, is that they say they want to focus on well-being, and they say it's all about getting healthy, and they all of a sudden talk about this relationship that is going haywire. And so then we're like, oh, that's what the issue is. And so even though it's not part of their goal, we want to bring that in. And that's where we stop to trust the process, is that's not what they said they wanted to focus on today. And we have to trust that what they said they wanted to focus on is all that we focus on. And eventually maybe they'll get to that, but maybe it's not today. And so then at the very end of the process, we come back. And if we stay within those parameters, we come back to the goal to say, how did you do? Did you reach your goal? What do you want to do to move forward, which is part of the process too, is I don't give you homework. You decide what you want to do to move this beyond the coaching session. And then we close out the coaching session. And that's the process.
Yeah. So it's like, so, and what I hear in that, like all the way through, the methodology is really keeping the client in the driver's seat, always holding them capable for almost every step of the whole thing. I think, maybe it's that's the challenge, is to be so hands off in a way, like, okay, well, I'm going to, we're going to guide you, but you're going to make all the choices and all the decisions and that sort of thing. And I'm just going to help with awareness, when so many of us that are attracted and drawn to coaching are helpers, or even as I confess to have been a chronic rescuer. I was always trying to rescue everybody all the time prior to getting trained. I'm like, this is even better, but now I have to like suppress my desire to rescue.
Right. And yet the more that we do it, the easier it is for us to sleep at night and to not take that home with us. And there's a great responsibility when we jump in and decide that this is what you really need to know right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then how do well, I know that one of the challenges, or perhaps somebody who's been coaching for a while and working with clients and things like that, generally engagements have a timeline, and I hear coaches getting anxious about, like, man, this is moving slower. They're not getting it. They're not progressing within the timeline in terms of getting, promised results that come from the process of coaching, though everyone is individually different. So how, as a coach, how do you handle that in terms of managing the expectations of the client as you're moving through?
Well, that's a great question. One is, in your agreements, making it very clear from the time that you sit down with them the very first time to say that this is your process to own, and this might be a very quick process, and it might take a lot longer than you anticipate. And having them sign that to say, yes, I know that. And just like we manage time within a coaching session, you're also managing time within that 6-month period, that year-long period of saying, now we're at 3 months. How are you doing? And what are you noticing so far? And how close do you feel like you are getting? What more do you need? What less do you need? And so that they can see their own progress, and so that it's not something that is blaring at the very end, that we don't wait till the end to say, oh, well, look at the time. It's been a half a year and we didn't get there. It's about managing that time all along the way, just like you would in an hour-long session.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. Like it's its own trajectory, like it's its own engagement, right? You have your individual engagements, and then you have the engagement of the entire time. So,
Right.
so I'm hearing you say, like, to kind of build in benchmarks along the way for questions that said, what are you getting? What are you getting out of this? What are you realizing? So they're starting to look and examine and comment about the value that they're getting without asking them, so what value are you getting out of doing this?
Right.
Tell me how great this is, so
Yeah.
that we can either continue coaching or whatever that whatever the goal is there. Well, helping them achieve their goal ultimately. And so what is it? What Let's do kind of a compare and contrast. So if I decide I'm going to just kind of fudge and help along my clients, and kind of give them a little answers to get help move their awareness a little quicker. What do I stand to lose? What's at stake with shall we say, just being kind of loose with that?
Well, I'm going to answer that in two different categories.
Great.
One, what's at stake is that coaching is really designed to increase someone's self-efficacy. And as soon as we step in and decide that we're going to nudge them along and that give them little nuggets so that they can move along, it actually decreases their self-efficacy, because they aren't figuring this out for themselves. And we can feel it, even if somebody poses a wonderful, what we think is this wonderful question. You can feel when there is an agenda behind it. And what it's really saying to somebody is, gosh, I just don't think you're smart enough to figure this out on your own. And so then I start to doubt myself of, can I figure this out? Am I going to have you the rest of my life? Because I can't do this.
Yeah. Is it really is the experience like a subconscious, occurring, like I'm not smart enough? That's how it shows up?
If you are familiar with coaching enough, and you've had somebody that has really trusted the process, and then all of a sudden you have a coach that doesn't do that and starts to feed information or starts to have leading questions, you will feel that immediately. In fact, I was talking to somebody the other day, and she's only 15 years old. But she's had a year's worth of coaching, and she said, I know immediately when somebody is asking me a question and it's leading me down to what they think I should be aware of, versus when somebody is truly curious and is holding what I think is important to me. And I will achieve amazing things over here, and I will resist, because all of a sudden you took away my choice and decided for me what I should think about.
Wow, what an amazing life skill. I mean, like, that's a side benefit. Like, side benefits show up to coaching and being coached. And that's not one that I had thought of. But I mean, like, the ability to discern that is pretty huge in terms of communicating and navigating.
Right. And you feel better about yourself. It's almost like you multiply that energy of, oh, what else could I do? As soon as you get with somebody that really is truly trusting the process, because they're not there saying, yes, I'll go with you, but right here, let me feed you. It's just, no, go for it.
Right.
Messy as it is, you can figure this through. And it's inside of that mess that we become the most creative individuals that we could ever become. It's when we don't allow somebody to sit in their mess that they never figure out how to get through that. So that's a long answer to that one side. The other side, that when we start to nudge or feed or get in our client's way, is that it impacts the field of coaching. And you had mentioned before we started that you're an NPR junkie, and there was actually a session on the air, and it was NPR, and it was all about, why would I ever hire a coach when I have a friend? And,
right. Yes.
and it was very interesting, and I so wanted to call in and tell them this is why.
Yeah.
And yet a lot of it was very valid comments, because when we start to give advice or start to even mentor or teach inside of the coaching, it dilutes, or it waters down what we have the capacity to achieve with a client. And so then people do start to question, why would I pay for this? I could have a friend do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's supposed to, that's so funny, because I've heard that many times, not just on the program. And I might have heard, was it a panel that you heard? I might have heard the same program. But it's like, when somebody says a friend is generally not going to ask you hard questions, and a friend is going to help you run away from the pain, even if going through the pain is what exactly that you need to do to get where you want. Right. It's like, friends make lousy coaches, because they just want to support you in whatever way that they think is going to get you away from the pain.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's so true. But I mean, but that's on us as coaches, right? To be able to articulate the value and the impact of what we're doing, and have that become more known, as well as consistent within this. So could you share for us some ways to, since, in a way, we spend a lifetime getting trained to give the answer and rescue people. And, I feel like it's the cultural norm to how can I come in and rescue and help? All of our movies are about, the hero showing up and rescuing the other person, not the hero showing up and holding them capable to rescue themselves. Although that would be an interesting movie, or superhero movie. Super coach, now what are you going to do about this situation? And so what are some things that someone can do to set the intention, or get them their mindset in such a way to build that muscle, to stay true to that process going into each session? Do you have some thoughts or ideas around that?
One is prepare yourself before you sit down with that client, and really ask yourself, what is this person up to, and what do they really need from me? And so that you have that mindset before you go in, versus how am I going to be successful with them? In addition, it's really about, when you're in the coaching session, writing down their goal, and then clarifying that, making sure that you're both on the same page before you ever jump into the coaching. So many times coaches will say, oh, you want to improve your leadership skills, and they think they got it, and then they go right into the coaching without spending quality time discerning what does that mean to them and what piece is important for them to focus on right now. And then inside of that, at the end of the coaching session, what's going to tell you that you were successful inside of this? And if you spent even 10 minutes on that, then you have your parameters of what to stay within. And you write that down. Anytime that you veer off that, you can go right back to your sheet of paper to say, that's what they said that they wanted. Jason just wants this. And then I can be true to the process because I can come back and regroup. And it is okay if all of a sudden you do veer off and you realize it, to say, oh, Jason, can I take that question back? And then go right back to, this is what you said you wanted. I got it really excited over here, but I'm going to be true to the process to remind your clients that this is theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's, it sounds like what there is to master, like a person takes a great course like yours, they get the competencies, they get certified. Now they're a beginner. Now they just have enough to like get going. And now it's just a matter of, from there, it's a matter of the practice and mastery of always holding that space to hold that other person capable, which has us keeping our like little rescuer ideas, out of it, or at least carefully placed. So this is really terrific, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation when you get into this a little bit deeper for the whole session. You're going to be opening the whole day for everybody on Friday. And so in closing, tell us a little bit about what brought you into coaching. Like what had you say, hey, you know what, I want to devote my life to coaching, never mind actually starting a coaching school with your mom, but actually just becoming as committed as you are to coaching, as well as staying true to what coaching is?
Well, my short answer always to that is that my mother made me do it.
Perfect. Well, what a great interview this has been.
So we'll just blame Ruthie and we'll move on. No, she is a committed learner. There's probably a better word for it, but she had taken her third coaching certification, and when she was taking that, the gentleman ripped up her test. And Ruthie takes everything literally, and so she was mortified. She thought she had flunked. And the gentleman said, no, Ruthie, you've taken coaching well beyond where it is. You need to go back to Minnesota and start your own school.
Wow.
And she came back and asked me how willing I would be to helping her with this. And so my boss loved my mother, and so she adjusted my schedule so I could do this on the side and still work full time. And then one magical day I was laid off. I came home, told my husband, this is it. I'm following my dream. And he said, no, you're going and getting a real job. And I ignored him. And I am so grateful, because I found my love. I didn't know that I loved coaching until I got further and further into it. And I think it really started to expose itself. The more research we did, the more challenging the clients became, the more my love grew for it, because I really could see what it could bring that so many other modalities cannot bring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's such a great story. So you actually what was your exposure to coaching just something that your mom did and she was interested in and you thought that was great? And then when she enrolled you in this mission, you're like, oh, well, now I'm going to get trained as a coach and start marching down that path? Or had you already been doing some things up to that point?
I had dipped my toe in it, but I didn't really know that much about it. Ironically, when she started down her path of coaching, I was going to grad school at St. Kate's, and I was writing my thesis, and St. Kate's did a wonderful job. I was getting my master's in organizational leadership, and they did a wonderful job of teaching us about what leadership was. And I really felt like there was a missing piece of how to lead. And I really, as I learned more about what Ruthie was doing, my mom was doing, I saw that this was the piece of how. But when I went to my advisor to write that as my thesis, she said, "Oh, don't do that. Coaching won't be around."
What?
And so I didn't. And I wrote my thesis on something that I hated. It's never been published. And ironically, years later, for many, many years, I taught coaching at St. Kate's.
Wow. Wow. Well, you know, that just reinforces what we were talking about this whole interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just like saying, oh, don't, like, I'm so certain that won't be, don't do that.
Right.
That you're engaged in, enrolled in, passionate about, don't do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Instead of posing the question. Yeah, that's perfect. Jennie, this has been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time to be out of your super busy schedule to do this interview. We are so looking forward to having you speak as our opening presenter for plenary session, having everybody in the room on Friday morning. It's going to be really fantastic to talk in more depth about this really important topic in our field, which is really, truly trusting the process and what it takes to master that and the difference that it truly makes to really stick to it. So thanks a ton, Jennie. We look forward to seeing you at the conference.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for taking the time to spend with me.